This is Dwight Livingston, and this presentation is part of the 2021 NSS Convention U.S. Exploration Series on Coon Cave in Germany Valley, West Virginia. Germany Valley is in Pendleton County, West Virginia. It's about 3 hours west, almost due west of D.C. I'm intrigued you can actually see the quarry in this Google Earth image, even at this scale. I go caving in Germany Valley about every month with the Germany Valley Karst survey, or GVKS. Germany Valley's been home to vertical caving for many years, with its start in Schoolhouse Cave, advances in Hellhole. Since the turn of the century, GVKS has really made the valley go, adding many miles to Hellhole, finding Memorial Day Cave, making a big breakout in Kimball Pit, plus many other small caves have been extended or found. Germany Valley lies between North Mountain to the southeast and the River Knobs on the northwest. The River Knobs include Seneca Rocks up farther north and runs along the North Fork of the South Branch of the Potomac River. Coon Cave sits pretty much in the middle. It's been known for many years. In 1959, a group from the Pittsburgh Grotto made at least the first report of being in Coon Cave. They toured and published a report and gave it its name, Coon Cave, named for a pair of raccoons they found inside. Since some push trips around 2005, Coon Cave hadn't seen much visitation. A group of us who had been caving in Shovel Eater for years and pushing small leads there decided that we'd like to take a break and see what was happening in Coon. This presentation covers 8 trips we've made to Coon Cave since November. On project weekends, we stay at the GVKS field house. Usually on Friday nights, we see a group of cavers blow through on their way to cave camp, maybe in Hellhole, maybe in Memorial Day Cave. Here's shown a unusual few months where we were having breakfast in the field house. Usually we like to have breakfast at the gateway just down the road before we start our caving day. After putting together our equipment, getting prepped for the trip, a traditional stop for the Shovel Eater crews have been collecting rocks at a local old quarry. We use those to fill ruts, fill in mud holes on the access road up to the Shovel Eater parking lot. It's only 6 or 7 kitty litter buckets at a time, but over the months, over the years, it's made quite a difference. And there'd be the usual trees down in the road as well. Mark will bring his chainsaw. We have plenty of rope, pull things out of the way. And then we finally make it up to the Shovel Eater parking lot. This is only a few feet away from the Shovel Eater entrance. Here's showing its air dam. And here's Bob Alderson. He's a Virginia caver. Has been with GVKS for many years and long-time hardcore caver before that. He took a bunch of pictures and did a lot of the survey work with me. And here's the entrance we were looking for. It was reported to be a rock outcrop, and some of our group had seen it before. We ran all over the woods looking for it. First month we tried it, we didn't even find the entrance. We found a lot of nice stuff though, a lot of pits, a lot of sinkholes, and this very pretty growth of turkey tail mushrooms. Next month, we came back with some survey data and distoed away over to an area and did find the entrance, mostly covered with dry stilt grass and leaves. But once we cleared that away, we found a hole pretty much the way as it had been. The Coon entrance is just over 500 feet from the shovel eater entrance and overlies the southern part of shovel eater, and somewhere in the area of the onion room. The shovel eater passages are at a much greater depth, more than 150 feet below the lowest point in Coon. This LiDAR interest is just fascinating. There you can see the line here where the split rail fence is. Our usual trip into Coon involves rigging a tree, getting our gear together. We rig a rope. The entrance is 16 feet, not quite the 20 feet that had been in all the literature, but still for safety, convenience, we put a rope down. And in recent trips, we've been putting in a cable ladder. And so the entrance gets dropped on rappel. Here's Yvonne Dromes, or Vonnie, as we call her when we're caving. She's another dedicated, lifelong Virginia caver. Been with GVKS since its start. She's just a great photographer for taking pictures while we're caving, while we're pushing caves, and majority of the pictures in this show are from Vonnie. It's quite a narrow entrance, not hard to drop down, but coming back out can be a challenge for anyone with long legs. We've made some modifications and improved, particularly at the bottom, so it's far more negotiable, but especially with a cable ladder. Here's a piece of the working map for Coon Cave. Up top, you see plan view, the entrance that drops down to a narrow canyon that runs on 2 levels. You can see at the bottom here, you descend on the upper level and follow the narrow canyon along to the southwest. First time we were there, we dropped down, free climbed down to the lower level back here. The second trip, Mark rigged a rope at the end of the upper passage to get down here. This picture shows the entrance drop looking up from the bottom with Mark working on the canyon. The canyon at this point doesn't look like your typical Germany Valley surface drain that cuts down from runoff, more like an old trunk level passage that developed on the water table. At the end of the upper passage, where Mark rigged a rope, is now this drop. Brings us down to the main level, makes exiting a lot easier. The next part of the cave runs through some S-curves. When we surveyed through here, we found, actually Bob was pushing up, and we found an upper level channel that we surveyed that runs along the top here. That the passage leads around to stalactite drop and the first traverse pit. In this profile view, here's that upper level passage we surveyed. We found a dome right in the middle of it. Hadn't seen any signs anyone had been up there, but maybe they had weathered away. In the cross section here, you can see stalactite drop about 10 feet that leads to another drop, a very muddy bank at the top of the traverse pit number 1. Traverse pit extends, you can see in the plan view, it's extending east-west, really tries to leave the main line of the cave, but ends in cobbles on the downstream end. Here's the top of the stalactite drop. It's only about 10 feet down. It can be pretty wet there. We found that particularly when there was a snow melt on. This is Gerhard Hauptmann. He's from Baltimore. Caved with GVKS about a decade back. Returned last fall, and he's been a big addition to the Coon Cave crew. He kind of wonders that he's done all these trips and all he's done is go to Coon Cave, but that's just part of Project Caving. Here's another view with Mark at the top of the stalactite. You can see it's a shelf that comes out from the wall, held up by a stalactite. A little farther on is the traverse pit number 1 with its bridge in the middle. This shows Kurt Waldron on the bridge. Kurt's another longtime Virginia caver. He was on our first Coon Cave trip. Had to bail for a time, but he expects to be back next month. I didn't drop the first pit the first time we were there, but in January was there to survey. It's a 44-foot deep pit and is pretty nice to free drop. The upstream end is a drip dome that is very much upstream, and then at the other end, as I said, it chokes up with cobbles. And here I am. I'm got my nose in the book as usual, and enjoying the survey. Farther along in the cave, the passage seems to open up, and you come across traverse pit number 2, which covers just about the entire passage. There's a rope rigged on the left that you can follow through, and then there's a couple of parallel pits in the profile view. You can see there's a 17-foot deep pit, and then a 42-foot pit that has some interesting meanders and bedrock fins hanging in the middle. Coon Cave doesn't seem like a particularly muddy cave, or at least it didn't to me when I was going in. I do find, though, that I end up being quite muddy coming out. Bob did what he calls the Coon Cave mud study. He went home, weighed his muddy gear, cleaned it, dried it, compared it and the weights, and found that he exited carrying 18.7 pounds of mud. And when you clean your gear, it really feels that way. Here's traverse pit number 2 with Bob standing on the bridge in the middle and Yvonne looking down. There's you can kind of see some of the bedrock fins that are really just what's left of a meander that goes all the way to the bottom. There's some nice formations around, and some white flowstone that you don't see much of in a muddy cave. Really just covered in a lot of areas. Bob and I surveyed this. That was another muddy job. Bob rigged it, put in a rebelay, and dropped both pits. Here's me coming out doing the rebelay. We found at the bottom a couple of well, there was the bottom of the pit and then an offset small room that had a drain in the flowstone. You could see that you might be able to push a little bit, but there wasn't any air coming out. Past traverse number 2 pit, the cave really gets to be decent sized, and there's more decorations. There's a nice column here. I have some pictures of that with a pit that has some fairly deep water at the bottom. At the back, there's a dome complex where everything changes or ends. Broken Dome Pit, which is the only named item on one of the old maps, and an infeeder coming in from the east. In profile view, here's Broken Dome that goes down, leads to a room that joins both the pit here that goes off to the infeeder and Broken Dome. Off of the bottom of that is yet another pit and a room, which we're calling Copper Pit, where you'll see there was a pipe from the original exploration with a note. This is the column with an interesting crack halfway up and flowstone on all sides. Cascades of white flowstone from the top and the pool of water at the bottom. Most of the cave was rigged when we found it. Not all of it looked particularly safe. There was this interesting, for a lack of a hanger, the bolt right through the webbing technique. If you can see this, that was interesting. We used some of it and have backed up or changed other parts of the rigging. At the dome complex, here you see the passage that goes off to the infeeder, the eastern infeeder, and over here is Broken Dome. This is the pipe in the Copper Pit with the note. This was left by the 1959 expedition, and I like how it says it was fully explored. This is a flowstone cascade that hangs above Broken Dome. When we surveyed there, I missed some of the holes. We were looking at it at a later trip and definitely want to do a short bolt climb and push some of those. Below it, I did notice a lead. I'll take credit for that one, which last month a bunch of us pushed. It involved dropping the pit a number of times. Very nicely decorated up top with some really nice formations. At the lip of the pit, there's Bob going down. Just 20 feet down, the pit splits. There's a small bridge that we stand on, basically just kept roped in all the time as we were working on this lead. I'm sitting at a small ledge in this picture with the lead at my back. And it was clearly a way on, but a little small. We did some widening on the passage, working our way in. Just mostly hammering, doing some shaving. We found there was part of it was mud, part was very fractionable rock. Some pulled off the ceiling, a lot came off the left. Until here's Vonnie getting a body length in. where it actually got a little bigger, enough that she could keep going in. And when we got back, we took turns getting back there, we found a pit, and that was a lot of fun. It was not set up without any kind of rigging. You couldn't get over it without seeing too much exposure. Couldn't even look down it. But it's apparently at least 20 feet deep by the sound, and could be at least 4 feet across from what you could see from this. We expect to get back there and rig it, see it where it goes next month. Here's the infeeder from the east. The drop that I think I showed you, this is the J hang. It's sort of a J hang where you go down and come back up to the level and continue along. Much of this is a crawlway. Some of it's just tight canyon. Here's the profile view of it. Down this way, this is right really up here is a dig they worked on in 2005, 2000, or in that time. Bonnie did one of those trips and said it was some difficult digging because of the slope. But there was air there. I went down it later when I surveyed it with Mark, and I was a little surprised. I mean, it seemed like a good lead, a lot of air coming out, but once we plotted it out, we saw it was heading right back toward Copper Pit. You can see that in the plan. It's just heading back. That maybe something could develop in the canyon between here and there, but that's just what it's doing. It's just going to be connecting to that. Beyond that blowing lead is crawlway and a little bit of canyon and a small drop that doesn't have much of the bottom, but does have a vent that's blowing a little air. And then on here you can see what I like to call the comfortable room. It's where we started working and started a dig here that led to nut job in this slope. And you can see the features of nut job that we found in the last months. Here's Bob at the top of the J-hang drop that goes out to the infeeder. And Gerhardt at the rebelay, or almost at the rebelay. This is a shot that shows Bob actually climbing out, but it's at the J-hang. Shows how the passage goes back into this connecting room that you can kind of do a circle with Broken Dome. I think this is the trip he weighed his gear and was bringing out I think he's wearing about 20 pounds of mud in this. I mentioned the little pit. Here Mark's rigging to put a rope down the small pit that's partway back in there. And here's Gerhardt going down. It's kind of a nice little 20-footer. And I went down there when we surveyed, and the vent was blowing air. It's nice. And then here's the terminal room. A nice room to work in, sit, eat, dig. We spent a number of months coming back here and working on the lead. Here's Vonnie working the drill. Yeah, Mark doing some hammering, making progress. We got it to where we found, at least at this one place, 2 people could fit, and Vonnie and I passing there. And in all, I think we dug about 6 feet. With most all of the known passage in Germany Valley is found by digging. You add up just the big caves. It's like 85 miles of passage, and digging has been what's produced it just about in all cases. And that's what we're hoping to find here is more cave. I want to, here's Mark Minton. I want to catch him with his drill in his hand. He's a very serious caver, hardcore caver, long time out of Texas and now many years from Virginia. And you'll often find him rigging, bolting, digging. He surveyed last day with me. But on this dig, they went around a corner. Vonnie was there, found the air was, they found the passage itself was blocked, but the floor was blowing air. Vonnie done a little and then had to scramble when the floor gave way below her. This is a little bit later. I was there. Mark went down. I had him on belay. And here has dropped down to the top of a steep slope that led down between narrow walls. You could see down it, but it was a bit tight for trying to ascend. So we worked on the passage more. Open it up a bit below. Rocks would fall away and they'd be silent for a few seconds and then bang away somewhere below. And with a rope down, they reached the bottom and found this room. It was very exciting. Wind coming up here, still plenty of air. Because of some nut caps and other surface debris we'd found in the room, we decided to call it Nut Job. And at the bottom, it was not a big room. It was kind of crowded, but it was a room nevertheless. And leads were going off in every direction. There was a muddy pit, 17-foot pit, right at the bottom of the slope, right in the middle of the room. To the right, there was a hole blowing air. On the left was an alcove, a drip alcove with Scanny Canyon. And forward was another hole that Mark and Gerhardt dug into, where they found another pit. And this is when I was surveying. This was pretty wet experience going down this thing. And none of those went, but up above, we could see way up into the canyon. In the alcove and in the second pit, the ceiling was 50 feet above where we were. And you couldn't quite tell what was going on up there. So on a following trip, Bob managed to free climb up to a shelf that was a good ways up. He couldn't get any farther free climbing, but then in a subsequent trip, he came back with bolting gear and continued up with Vonnie belaying him. He got much farther up, but unfortunately the rock became very thin. He was setting bolts and pulling them out by hand. Just couldn't find, there just wasn't anywhere to put a bolt. He was up 16 feet roughly under the ceiling, but couldn't get any farther. He did say that it was, at that point, it wasn't looking very promising. Here's Vonnie. She was belaying Bob on his bolt climb, trying to manage the belay rope in pretty muddy conditions. So she rigged this harness to keep it out of the mud. Which left, with everything else crapping out, left the hole on the right, which doesn't look like much of a hole, but it's blowing air. There, you can't sit there long without really getting chilled. It's like standing in front of an air conditioner. So last month, Gerhard and Bob went to start digging on that and made progress. So it's a pretty muddy dig. There's a lot of clay. They didn't look real happy, but they did make some progress. And just with all the air there, we'll definitely be going back. And so here Bob waves goodbye on another great project trip for GVKS. Here's our working map. You can see, again, here's nut job and the lead we're hopeful for. This is the new pit that we're going to drop next month, is about this. Both these leads are heading south into white paper, so we're excited about the potential of both these things. That's the end. More maybe later.